Welcome, everyone. My name is Tam Hun, and I am the Executive Director of the Holocaust and Human Rights Center, and we are thrilled to be here with you tonight. We have planned a program that we hope is a program from which you can learn as well as be inspired by our four panelists, Alex, Zabrina, Cocoe, and Deven. Tonight, they share their experiences in Maine in the wake of the racism and xenophobia directed at Asian American communities. Raising awareness and encouraging individuals and communities to reflect and act upon their moral responsibilities to confront discrimination is at the very core of the HHRC's work. And I know you are eager, like myself, to hear more about what these panelists have to say about confronting discrimination in Maine schools. Before we go ahead to all of the panelists, I would like to introduce tonight's moderator, Alex Han. Born and raised in Maine, Alex is a second-generation Korean Chinese American. He is a graduate of Falmouth High School and received his undergraduate degree in cognitive science from Brown University. Among his many talents and professional ambitions, he is also deeply engaged in social justice and passionate about racial equity, a wonderful inspiration from the work that we are trying to do in confronting discriminations in our school. Alex, welcome, and we'd love to hear from you to begin.
Thank you for that introduction, and thank you for everyone for attending this event. We're really excited to discuss our experiences and share with you some of our thoughts on current events and what we can all do to learn and help the Asian American community. So I'm going to start off by having the panelists introduce themselves. And then I'll speak a little bit about the format of how this is going to work today, and then we'll get right into the topics. So first, why don't we hear from the panelists? So please introduce yourself using your name, pronouns, what school you attend, and your ethnicity, and also what your favorite Asian food is, or one that you ate recently. And let's start with Zabrina.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to watch the panel discussion. It means a lot. So my name is Zabrina Richards. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I attend the new school in Kennebunk, Maine. My ethnicity is Chinese American, and my favorite Asian food is a very hard one. I think one of my favorite Chinese dishes is a beef noodle soup.
Great, thanks, Zabrina. And how about you, Cocoe?
Hi, I'm Cocoe. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I go to Wayne Free School, and I think my favorite, I'm Japanese. Sorry, I forgot that part. And I think my favorite Asian dish is probably ramen for the moment. It kind of changes like every week, but I'll say ramen.
Great. And our last panelist, Deven.
Hi, I'm Deven Abrams. I use he, him, his pronouns. I attend Casco Bay High School in Portland, and I'm half Indian. And my favorite Asian food, well, one of my favorites is pani puri. Which is like a little circle of dough, which is from India.
Awesome, thank you guys. So basically the way that we're going to run things is we've come up with a bunch of pre-written topics we're discussing. I'm going to try to split time evenly between our panelists. So for each one, I'll be going back and forth between Zabrina, Cocoe, and Deven, and we'll have kind of like a room for some conversation as it comes up organically. But we also welcome you to submit your own questions. And I believe there is a Q&A button on the bottom of the webinar. And you can submit questions whenever you want. We may not get to them because there are very many of you, but we'll try our best to get to them as they come, or if it's something that we're going to discuss, maybe I'll just acknowledge that. But if it's something that that we can discuss towards the end, then we're reserving about 20 minutes, 30 minutes at the end for all audience questions. So starting now, I think we can open up the Q&A and just and then I'll try to address as many of them as I can. But I think we're going to go ahead and get started. And if anyone has any questions on just how to submit, I guess you can also type in the chat potentially, but we're just going to get right into the first topic, which is the experience of growing up in Maine as an Asian American. So our first question is, can you describe a moment in your life when you realized that you were different because of your race? And let's start with going to Cocoa.
Yeah. So I think like one experience is I remember it was around like 5th grade or 6th grade. I was going out to eat lunch with my friends, and afterwards like they had like leftover boxes, and we were outside walking, and then I told them this like Japanese myth that like my parents told me the other day, which I found like really cool, and I wanted to share with them because they were my friends. And it was basically like, if you eat while you're laying down, you turn into a cow the next day. And I was telling them that, and they kind of like started laughing at me. And then they lay down on a bench right next to them and like kind of started eating their like leftover salad. And I just remembered that like they were making fun of like my like, I guess like the cultural, like the Japanese culture. And I think that moment I kind of started to stop making cultural references, because like I just didn't want people to like think it's like funny and like as a joke anymore. So I feel like that was one experience that I remember.
Sorry, I realized I'm muted. Let's go to Deven now. Do you have any similar experiences or anything that you'd like to add?
I think it's kind of been a series of experiences, like spending time at school with like where I'm mostly where I don't have as many Indian friends per se, and then going to like the IAM functions and like hanging out with all my Indian friends, just kind of the culture differences just kind of emphasized that I was a little different based on my race. Yeah.
How about you, Zabrina?
Yeah, so I was adopted by a white family, and so I always sort of knew that I was different because my family was white and I'm obviously Asian. And so I think one of the moments that, as Deven also said, it was like a series of events where peers of mine that were white made fun of, like my physical appearance, such as like pulling the corners of their eyes, like saying ching ching chong, just hurtful stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think all of your experiences that you've mentioned so far are all something that so many Asian Americans experience. And, I haven't experienced all of those things, but I can definitely relate to a good portion of what you're saying. And I think part of it, though, is also unique to growing up in a community like Maine, which is very predominantly white. And I think that brings us to our next question, which is, how is your upbringing impacted your Asian American identity? So this could be your environment, your community, school, presence and absence of mentors, family, or friends. Deven, how about you?
I think that kind of growing up with, well, Maine, as you said, is very predominantly white. And so there's not a lot of Indian people here. And so we have a really tight-knit community. And this has kind of led to me kind of, when I go to the functions, kind of spending time with the same kind of core group of people over the last, over my entire life, really. And so I think that's really kind of given me the confidence to be Asian American in Maine. And I think definitely like having my mom be so active in the community has really been inspiring to me as an Asian American youth.
Awesome. And could you just be a little more specific? I'm curious what kinds of communities, specifically Indian communities, are you sort of active in? Is it sort of religious communities or? Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of overlap, but also I would say that there's the IAM functions, Indian Association of Maine, and then there's just like seeing people at the temple and just kind of having that community element is really, really good to have.
Yeah, great. And how about you, Zabrina? Have you found that there's been a community for Chinese Americans in Maine for you?
Yeah, I actually, so because my mom is white and my whole entire family is white, my mom put me into Chinese school, and so I feel like the majority, some Asian kids do get enrolled in Chinese school, or I think there are other versions of it like Japanese school, Korean school, and I feel like a lot of us don't like it, but we're there because there are so many people with our faces and that have a shared culture. So yeah, I think because I was adopted by a white woman, I felt not fully connected to my Chinese heritage. And so my mom enrolled me into taking Mandarin Chinese. And so that really helped me become more connected to my Chinese heritage, and as well as a former social studies teacher that I had who is Indigenous and is a part of the Aquina Wampanoag tribe. And they really helped me validate my experience as a person of the global majority, which is popularly referred to as people of color, because I feel like Asian Americans have been dismissed because of concepts such as the model minority myth.
Great, yeah, and we're planning on discussing the model minority myth at some length later on, but I did want to circle back to one thing you said. So because you're an adoptee, do you feel like you are the one who had to reach out and find Asian communities, like you said, take Mandarin classes, or find mentors or teachers, or was that something that was facilitated by your parents? I guess, and what's your sort of attitude towards that? Has it changed over time?
Yeah, so my mom made me go to Chinese school and Chinese classes, which at first I was like, no, I don't want to do that because of all the jokes I had received. I just did not want to be associated with being Asian. But, as I took Mandarin classes, I was really able to embrace my Chinese heritage.
Awesome. And how about you, Coco? How has your upbringing influenced your identity?
Yeah, kind of similar to Zabrina when she said like how like there was moments where she didn't want to be Asian, and I think that was a big part of like when I was growing up. And I think it's because like I've always had white friends, and like there's not really like any Japanese community in Maine, so like I just literally didn't know anything about like my Japanese heritage, only like the little things my parents would say, but even then they wouldn't really talk about it. And so like it took me a really long time to kind of like identify, like kind of associate like that I was like fully Japanese. Like I think it was until like sophomore year where I like kind of fully realized that like it is something that I should embrace and should be proud of. And I think that's the reason why is because I was able to attend this summer camp with other like Japanese American or like like fully Japanese but only spoke English like me. And so it was really nice to like connect with them and kind of relate to like them because I've never had that like experience before in my life until then.
Cool. So yeah, I'm hearing a lot of great stuff from you guys, actually relating to our next question, which was how have you embraced your Asian American identity? And it sounds like a huge part of that is just exposure and belonging to communities, whether that's a kind of like a language learning kind of community or a religious community, or just having teachers and friends of the same ethnicity. And all of you are from South, kind of the southern part of Maine, right? I'm just curious. Yeah. And actually, what towns do you all live in? I think that's part of one question that someone had asked, so might as well get to it now. Where are you from, Deven?
From Portland.
Portland. And how about you two, Zabrina?
I'm from Kennebunk.
Kennebunk, right? Okay. And then Cocoe, you were from Portland?
From Freeport.
Freeport. Okay. Cool. And I guess while we're at it, I just want to address one question from somebody that they were just asking what grades you all are in, and whether you feel like what grade you are in affects what different views and actions you experience towards yourselves as Asian Americans. Deven?
I'm in 11th grade, and I don't feel like they have a huge difference in views or actions toward minorities.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's more based on like the kind of people they're surrounded with and the kind of just the kind of attitude they have towards minority groups, whether that be good or bad. I don't think it really has that much to do with what grade they're in.
Yeah, I think they're all, there's only 4 years in high school and they're all pretty close to each other. I know it seems like you guys are worlds apart and when you're in a freshman versus a junior or something like that. But any thoughts, Zabrina? Do you feel like there's a difference in how you were perceived or how you're treated based on what grade you were in?
Yeah, so I'm currently a senior in high school. I think I would agree with Deven. I think it's, it's hard to just like say like one thing for certain, but I think it really depends on the person. But I do think as you mature, your beliefs become more complex and nuanced.
Yeah, for sure. Any additional thoughts, Cocoe?
I don't really think so. I feel like they kind of said it all. I agree with both of them, and I'm also a senior.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and just before we move on, I just want to acknowledge we have a bunch of questions about education and resources and what we should teach in curriculums and what kinds of other activities or other resources we can provide for students to help them feel more comfortable. Those are all amazing questions. We're going to get to some of those things, I believe, a little bit later. Possibly when we talk about the model minority myths. So great questions, keep them coming. Just want to acknowledge we will be talking about some of that. But for right now, I think maybe we can go to our questions about COVID-19, which kind of presents a unique issue. A lot of the experiences we've been talking about so far are more generalized and have been happening for quite a long time. And but obviously with this last year's pandemic, we've seen a particular kind of racism become concerningly common. So I would love to just ask the panelists now about how COVID-19 has impacted you and your community. Have you experienced any kind of discrimination, or do you know of any discrimination that's happened, to people around you in your areas? Let's go to Coco first for this one.
I personally haven't really experienced anything like discrimination based on like the COVID-19, which I'm very happy for, because I don't think I would really like not handle that well. But I feel like mentally I prepare myself whenever I go out. Like every time I go into like a grocery store or somewhere public, like I kind of prepare myself that someone could come up to me and say like something very racist and like say that I caused the virus and everything. So like physically something hasn't really happened, but mentally I always like prepare myself.
Yeah, I know that feeling. I think a lot of us do. Do you feel like you relate to that as well, Deven?
I haven't really faced any prejudice or racism caused by the coronavirus pandemic. And I would say that's probably because a lot of the hate currently being directed at Asian Americans because of the coronavirus is often directed towards East Asians. And so yeah, I haven't really faced any prejudice because of that.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that from both of you, that you haven't really been victim of any, hate speech or anything like that. I do think that, yes, it seems to be, I think just because of the way it's been reported in the media and just how, how the numbers have been and everything like that, I think people are targeting East Asians probably a bit more. Zabrina, have you, as an East Asian, experienced anything like that?
Since COVID or during COVID, fortunately I haven't. My mom, I think like from the beginning of like last year, from like April to September, like she just did not let me go to the grocery store because she was like really worried that I would be like experience that or become like another like hate crime statistic. I would agree with Coco on how she described how she like mentally prepares herself to go outside if she does need to do so. I think like when I've been on walks with my mom, outside wearing a mask, I've told her like, hey, do you have your phone? Like just in case if like we need to take a video of something. And so just having to worry about that is really stressful.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm just glad that none of you have experienced any direct discrimination. But I think that it's important to note that that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. To anyone watching, I think it's clear from the news that these kinds of acts of discrimination are happening all the time, and even if it's not happening to any one of our panelists, I think that anxiety and that potential is something that is harmful. And I personally, I'm currently not in New York, but I live in New York, and I personally know a lot of people who have been spit on, verbally abused. Famously, this got in the national news. One of my friends, who's a jazz drummer, was pretty severely beaten, and so badly that his hands, he can't play piano anymore. So there's a big community rally to try to help him out and try to pay for his hospital bills and help support his family. But these kinds of things, even if it's not happening directly to every Asian American, we're being bombarded in the news by acts like that, and it does create this looming sense of potential violence that we've also heard a lot about in the past year happening to Black Americans. So that's also something that I think we are going to discuss at some point. And I do want to just acknowledge someone asked a question how do you see yourself in relation to white, Black, Native peers growing up in Maine? That's a great question. And I think we're going to touch on that as well a little bit later. But going back to sort of current events, so as most of you, I think, probably have heard, around 2 weeks ago in Atlanta, Georgia, there were some horrific hate crimes, killing 8 people, 6 of whom were Asian women. And so a couple questions relating to that. First of all, what was it like to hear about those events for you? And then as a follow-up, if you also want to touch on it, during these times of mourning and fear and hurt, how can non-Asian Americans support Asian Pacific Islander American communities? So let's go to Deven first for this one.
Yeah, when I first heard about this, it was rough. Like I had to like hear them say it twice. And just like kind of just hit close to home for me. Like just kind of knowing that, I mean, just knowing that Asian communities or Asian American communities are vulnerable to this scale of hate crime was just really jarring. That's the only word for it.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Zabrina?
Yeah, it's still registering through my mind. It's honestly really frightening. Because I mean, it was 6 Asian American women that were murdered by a white domestic terrorist. And it's also frightening because it took so long for a lot of news outlets, celebrities, schools, and just friends to realize what has been happening to Asian Pacific Islander American communities. I mean, we've been experiencing this for like about a year now, like the rapid increase. I mean, like anti-Asian sentiments isn't new to the United States. I also feel that it's really frustrating because I'm the only student of the global majority or student of color at my school. And I emailed my teachers about this, requesting if they would like educate themselves, like learn about what's happened, just the recent spike in general, and discuss this with the community and publicly condemn just anti-Asian violence in general. And what's really upsetting with this is that I feel that this is not my job to do this, but yet again, I feel that I have to do this so my peers can be informed of what's happening. And yet I'm just so tired of doing this type of work because, you know, I need to take care of myself and I need to show up for my community as well. Yeah, I mean, it was a hate crime. The guy literally went to 3 businesses owned by Asian Americans and he murdered 6 Asian American women. I think on a positive note, some things that allies can do is to listen to our stories, like what you guys are doing right now, amplify our platforms, educate yourself about Asian American history, and continue to include Asian Americans in your anti-racism work.
Right, thank you, Zabrina. Yeah, I agree. It has been kind of exhausting in a way, and also I imagine for you guys in Maine, where you very much are possibly the only handful of Asian Americans in your communities, that there is sort of this burden maybe, or kind of feel like the need that to educate or be the one to advocate or speak up, which I really admire all of your efforts, and especially just in coming here today to speak. But ultimately, yeah, it shouldn't really be your job to have to shout to be heard. But hopefully this sparks a wave of allyship that hopefully can be productive. And Coco, let's circle over to you. Any reactions to the events in Atlanta? Any thoughts on how you're dealing with it, how others might be?
Yeah, I completely agree with Zabrina. Like, at first I was very, like, I guess, a little like speechless. And I remember my mom just telling me the next morning to like be careful, and told our whole family that like to be careful outside, especially after like a Asian woman like in Portland who was also like attacked with her like kids in the car as well. So like that kind of made it more like, that kind of hit it deeper, I guess, because it's like Portland, I'm always there. And I remember I had like work the next day, and for work like I usually like deliver the orders to the cars, because it's like curbside pickup. So I go outside in like Congress Street, and so like that's in the middle of Portland, and I usually like do that until like 8 o'clock, so like until it's dark. And I remember that day that I was terrified to go to work that day, because like I would be seeing a lot of people like, and like just like walking back and forth on the streets. But luckily like I did something else that day. Like I was on the phones like taking people's order, and I just remember that like a wave of like relief of not like walking outside that night. And yeah, I just feel like to like what could help for non-Asian people would be like not making this like a trend, not making it like a 2-week like, I guess, like posting it about on your story, but not only like for 2 weeks. Like just keep including Asian voices and stories.
Yeah, I think that's super, super important. I think that I think the attack in Portland goes to show that even, like you guys were saying, you haven't faced discrimination based on, or during the pandemic, stuff like that. Yeah, but that does not mean at all that Maine is immune from these kinds of issues. In fact, the violence is happening right in our neighborhood. Just as a little bit of a more positive note, we have a question here that I would love to get to here that just says, what has brought you joy, restoration, and healing during this time of heightened violence and anti-Asian racism? I guess let's go to Zabrina first.
Yeah, I think out of all this, out of all these tragic events and horrific events, I think what has made me have some hope are the events that are going on, the rallies, the vigils, and it just shows that people do care about Asian Pacific Islander Americans, and as well as seeing the amazing Asian Pacific Islander American activists and people that are really contributing to the community and making sure our voices are heard and amplified during these times.
Great, and we're getting a lot of questions coming in, so I'm trying to hit as many as we can with still hitting all the topics we want to cover, but I'm sorry in advance if I don't get to your question. I just want to, maybe I'll give this to, I'll try to hit a couple of related ones here and maybe give them to Coco and Deven. We have a couple questions here that are sort of related to what white people or allies can do to make people feel more comfortable. We have one question here that says, is there a way that I, as a white woman, can give a signal to a non-white person that I am quote unquote safe, i.e. when I pass someone while walking? And as a kind of a joinder to that, I'll also add this question that we've got in the chat that says, if derogatory or racist comments are made, are there things that others, aka non-AAPI, have said to the speaker that you have seen as being helpful or not helpful? Yeah, Coco, if you need to have me repeat any of that, I know I just said a lot of things, but can you speak at all about what allies could do or have done that could make you feel more comfortable?
I think like if I saw someone on the street, like I guess like I tend to do this, I just like look at the person who's like walking past me, but I guess like sometimes when people stare at me, I get very uncomfortable and then I go straight to thinking that like, are you staring at me because I'm Asian? So, but I don't know, I like that's a very hard question. But and then what was the second question?
Yeah, is there anything that people have said to you that has either been non-helpful or helpful? Either kind of just coping with the grief of violent events and hearing terrible news, but also just maybe the threat of racism as a result of COVID.
Yeah, I can think of one thing. I don't really know if it really answers the question, but today actually, my friend, one of my teammates, she was talking about another Asian attack in New York City about, I forgot what release she said, but she said that like she saw this video and then I was like, and she was like, oh, you should watch it or something like that. And I was like, I don't really want to watch an Asian like woman being attacked on the streets of New York City. And she was kind of like, you should, to like, like keep up a little bit. I don't know, something like that's how I perceived it. But I don't know, I guess like being aware that like the Asian community is still very fragile and like watching a video to like add to the more hate crimes and violence doesn't really help, like I guess like the processing and like the mourning, I guess.
Totally. Yeah. I think that is one thing where maybe allies or non-Asian people are thinking, oh, I'm showing that I'm engaged, or I'm trying to stay informative and I want to let people know that. I've definitely seen a share of that online. But then then maybe they forget that even just seeing those kinds of acts of violence, that's kind of traumatic if you are Asian American. Yeah, that's a great point. Deven, I'm going to go to you for the next question, but I just for the sake of moving on, because we're falling a little bit behind, I do want to get to our next big topic, which is the model minority myth. So let's start with you, and I would love to just ask you about what do you think the model minority myth is, and how do you believe it's been used in the United States?
So the model minority myth, it's kind of like something that is designed to make Asian Americans seem like they are the shining example of success in America. Whether that be academically or financially, just kind of like using us as kind of like showing us off as the success story of America.
Right, and I think there's so many issues with the kind of model minority attitude and the way it's weaponized, I think, by in service of upholding white supremacy. But I think one thing is that several people I think have mentioned in the questions is how these kinds of perceptions might be used to sow division between different ethnic groups of POCs. So, for instance, Blacks versus Asians, and I definitely have seen a fair share of that online, with it's suddenly seeming to be that we're juxtaposing anti-Asian violence with anti-Black violence, and trying to compare them when they're really incomparable and ultimately stem from the same sources. So I think that, yes, we have had several questions about that. I would love to hear what you guys think about that. But just real quick first, I would love to just get your thoughts on how the model minority myth has had an effect on you directly. So let's go to Zabrina now. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think academically speaking, since I've been a student for the majority of my life, So I think the model minority myth has made me feel not a person of the global majority, because I feel like the model minority myth strips the identity of being a person of the global majority, and then you're like, just like, there's like people of the global majority, and then there's Asian people, and then there's white people. I feel like that's how the model minority myth treats Asians. And so it took me a long time to really validate my experience as a person of the global majority, and also as an Asian American. And learning about just Asian American history really helped me validate my experience. And I think one other way the myth has impacted me is like, my teachers describe me as hardworking, and I try my best with everything, but I always second guess if it's because of my race.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that I've also definitely experienced that as well in high school. I remember one time, I got an essay back or something, and I did very well. I think I got like 100 on an essay or something like that. And my teacher said to me, "Oh, of course, typical Asian, straight A's." And I was just thinking, like, you graded me. You're the one who gave me that grade. So I think it's something that's taken so lightly, just because it sort of seems like it's a complimentary or a positive thing, people giving you credit or assigning good qualities to you. And so it's a way for people to comfortably discriminate, I think, in a way that's a little bit masked. What do you think about that, Coco? Or do you feel like you've experienced anything similar, or any thoughts on the model minority myth in general?
Yeah, I've definitely had people say that, like, oh, you're smart, and I definitely kind of think that they're saying that because I'm Asian, and so it really feels like they're discrediting me, like saying that, like, I don't know, it's just like, just because of my race, I'm smart, not because I put effort into it and hard work and like time, and that just really bugs me. And also, like what Zabrina was saying about like how the model minority kind of splits other like Asian and other minority groups. Like, I agree with that. I feel like with the model minority myth, it seems like the Asian community is portrayed that they don't go through oppression, and that they are off to a great like story, like being like financially like successful, and like, but like it really glorifies like the, I guess, like immigration story in the US, I believe. Like, there are many Asian like immigrants that don't go to college, that don't have a like, well, like a stable job, or like, like kind of like my family was like that for a very long time, and they put in hard work, but the like model minority doesn't like shed light on those stories for the Asian community.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's so many things that are intersecting here that lead to these misconceptions and how they're kind of weaponized. I do think one thing that you're pointing to is just the Asian community is not a monolith. There are hundreds of subgroups, even just from broad ones from East Asians versus South Asians versus Southeast Asians, and all those experiences are different for immigrants from any of those places to America. And also just the circumstances historically that have led to these different groups coming to America. A lot of times from a certain generation, then there was a big influx of immigrants from China who had PhDs or are coming, under certain circumstances, coming very educated with certain goals in mind, certain backgrounds. And that may be the experience of one group of people that goes on to be financially successful or what have you, but it doesn't speak for everyone. And it certainly should not be used as a point of comparison to say, all you other minorities, look at these guys, they did it, they pulled themselves up by their bootstraps, so why can't you? I think that's sort of the most dangerous application of it. So we're getting towards the end, unfortunately, of our panel. It seems like it went by really quickly. There's been so many good questions here, and I'm really disappointed that we won't be able to get to all of them. But I think one thing that I would love to touch on is education and how Asian history has been represented in education. What can be taught? What can teachers and communities do to enforce or spread awareness and provide a kind of vibrant community for Asian students? So we've had tons of questions about this. I guess let me try to highlight some that might be good for you guys to answer. We've had a couple that have asked what kinds of resources you would like to see taught in class, such as, like, English class, history class. Are there certain parts of history or certain works of fiction or nonfiction that you can think of that you might like to see taught? Deven?
I don't know. I don't have any ideas for that, but I guess just like seeing someone Asian like represented in a good light can be really positive.
Yeah, it's tough to point out specifics because I think you guys are already products of an education system that is underrepresenting Asians. So yeah, I don't really blame you for not being able to spit out some titles. But I think, yeah, I think you touched on something interesting there too, which is that, I think it would be good to have representation in education in a non-tokenizing way. So, for instance, not just having, Joy Luck Club-esque fiction or something like that sort of romanticizes and pigeonholes the experiences of Asian Americans, and have something maybe more organic and not necessarily all about this sort of standard immigrant experience. Let's go to Zabrina. Do you have any thoughts on how curricula could be changed, or maybe activism groups? I think we had some questions about extracurricularly or something like that. Anything that teachers and communities can do?
Yeah, I think it's really important to include Asian Pacific Islander Americans in your work. If you're an educator, it doesn't matter if you're a social studies teacher, if you're a math teacher, English teacher, science teacher. I mean, you can include Asian Americans that have made strides in science, math, art, all that type of stuff. I think it's really important if you have like a big enough population of Asian students to make a group for them. I think that there is one that may be starting, which I'm really excited for, and just having a space for Asian Pacific Islander American students would be really great.
Awesome. How about you, Coco? Anything to add?
Yeah, I feel like it's very important, at least for English and history, to add Asian voices, because I think I've only read one book in my entire life, from like middle school to high school, of an Asian author. And usually, like, for my school, they try to like diversify the authors in the books we've read, but like it's always been like Black authors and never been Asian authors. And
right, so if they include a Black author, it's sort of like, check, we've done diversity, we're done now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's like, I feel like that's how I like kind of like perceive it as, even if that's not their intention, like that's how it comes off to me. And I guess for history, like there's like at my school, there's an African American history class, but there isn't an Asian American history class, which like, yeah, kind of like, I guess like maybe not enough students will take it, but I feel like they should, like, even in the regular like US history class, they should try to add it more, instead of like, let's read this small passage on the Japanese internment camps or the Chinese Exclusion Act, and then like talk about it for like 5 minutes and then let's move on to the next topic. Like, I think they should definitely add in more like in-depth and like analysis on those.
Yeah, that's something that I personally would have loved to see is more of the history of Asians. I think especially like the stuff that they usually focus on, ancient history, the Tang Dynasty or ancient India, stuff like that. I think that it may be worth shifting a focus a little bit to more of the history that's happened in the last 2 centuries, and especially in relation to America. Okay, so we're running low on time. I'm getting a lot of questions about resources. Where can people go to find out more, educate themselves on Asian American experiences? What can people do? How can they help out in the community? I'm seeing tons of great questions here. And I think that might be a good way to wrap up, is just to discuss what can allies do? What can people go to read and listen and pay attention? So, for one, I know definitely, Zabrina, your Instagram page is one place that people can show their support, right? I know I'm skipping over you, Deven, but let's. I would love to just have you put the name or link of that in the chat or something.
Yeah, of course. It's called In My Own Words. I'll put a link really soon. I think also some great books that you can read. I think there's a book called The Sympathizer by Viet Thanh Nguyen. I've also been reading Saigon by Phuc Tran. Books by Erica Lee, PBS Asian Americans documentary. It's a great start. I think there's also an episode about immigration on Amend, which is a Netflix series, which is really great.
Awesome. Thank you. Deven, any resources you'd like to point out, or ideas of how allies can help?
I don't have any resources personally, but just like, I mean, you can find a reliable source, and then just like look for some information on how to help be a effective and good ally for your AAPI friends and community members, and just like also just doing like the little things like checking up on your AAPI friends to see how they're doing, just like make sure they're okay. Also educating yourself, just like and then doing something with that education. It's definitely, you can educate yourself, but you have to do something with that education, or else it doesn't affect change.
Right. Yeah, and I think it, like you said, it can be just little things like learning how to say our names, or not stopping to read about this stuff in a couple weeks when it dies down in the media. Coco, any ideas about resources or action steps for allies?
Yeah, I agree with like everyone. I guess like kind of keeping up, even if it's not in the media, it doesn't mean that it's not happening around the world. And like, I guess trying to like hear more about like, I guess, reading books by Asian authors, even something as simple as like watching a show that has a Asian like a protagonist that's not following like the stereotypical like, I don't know, nerd or like having an accent, but like kind of like someone who's like authentic and like kind of going through a similar like being an Asian American, like trying to figure out like their identity while being somewhere that they're like not very like included in, like something as simple as that, even though it doesn't really seem like you're just watching a show, but like you can actually learn a lot from that main character.
Yeah, totally. And I think that was something, unfortunately, we had discussed before, but we didn't discuss today, which is representation of Asians in the media, and how that might be good or how it might be harmful, or where we have to go from here. I do want to note that in the chat, a lot of people have been posting names of books, and I think there was some podcast stuff like that to check out. Definitely first of all, thank you all for contributing those. That's great. But yeah, I'd say before you log off this call, take a look at the chat. I think a lot of people have been putting some great resources in there. And before we sign off, I think I would love to just sort of hear any final statements from our panelists, and then also just we'll hear from HHRC in a second. But I do want to just thank everyone for coming. I think this is a great discussion, and I wish we had more time because there's a lot of great things to discuss, and it seems like people are excited to learn more, which is I think a really good sign. But any final words from you three? Let's start with Zabrina.
I think I just want to reiterate what Coco said, and at some point, just continue to include Asians in your anti-racism work. Make sure that this doesn't become a trend, but more so a movement.
Great. How about you, Coco? Any final words?
This was really exciting and fun. Like, it was really liked hearing everyone's voices. Yeah, and I really wish we had more time so we could discuss about representation in the media. But I think we went through a lot of good topics today.
All right. How about you, Deven? Final thoughts?
I mean, I just want to reiterate like everything that Zabrina and Coco said, because I also think that once again, educate yourself and then do something with that education. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for being panelists. I thought you guys did a great job. And I think we're going to hear some final words from Tam from HHRC. So I'll turn it over to her.
Thank you, Alex. You and others, we are just so grateful to have you all sharing your experiences and how we can be better supporters of the AAPI communities by becoming allies in our schools and community at large. Thank you for being the very stewards of the work that the HHRC does. A virtual round of applause to Alex, Zabrina, Coco, and Deven as we conclude our program. Certainly following this program, we will share resources as a guide, and it will also include a more detailed guide on how to support the AAPI community without causing harm. And to echo Alex, Zabrina, Coco, and Deven, there are wonderful resources throughout this chat that we hope to include. If you would like to support future programs like this, please visit our website, hhrcmaine.org. But moreover, thank you. Thank you to our panelists, and thank you everyone for attending. Have a good night.